All right, who's ready to rock and roll and figure out why we would even want to learn Python? While I tell you why you might want to learn Python, those of you that have a Mac, if you can go into your applications and into Terminal, you already have Python installed on your Mac, which makes it nice. For those of you that are using Windows and have internet access, I think Replit, can you put the link? Or Code Academy?
I don't have internet right now.
Oh, you don't have internet right now. Okay. Well, even if you don't have a laptop or if you don't have Python installed, no worries. Trey's going to be doing everything here. We're also going to put stuff online at our meetup group. And like they mentioned, we have study groups, so there's always opportunities to learn it again or get a refresher or email me or whatever. Okay, so why Python? Well, Python is used in web development. For those of you that have ever used Eventbrite or Instagram or Pinterest, those are all websites that were developed with the framework Django, which is based on Python. So Python, although it's easy and the learning curve is very quick, you can do some very powerful stuff with it. If you like games, there's things like Pygame and Piglet, and I know people have made things like, what is it, Guitar Hero Rock Band with the little colors that light up. They've made games like that in Python using those tools. One of the huge areas of growth for Python right now is in the sciences, biotech, financial services, data analysis, lots of graphing, visualization. And one of the things that's cool is in a few lines of code, sometimes as few as 5, you can do meaningful graphs and charts and data crunching that before would have taken thousands of lines of code. For those of you that are into the arts, there are some great libraries within Python that will let you do language processing. You could do music theory. You could take an ebook and pull out like any number of words based on what you are interested in. So there's a lot of open government data, things that are being used to make things better. And so that's just the short why Python. And the other thing with Python is it does play nicely with other languages and other things, so that's kind of cool too. Okay, so, so let's get started. And I think the easiest way to get started is to use Python as a calculator. And right now what we've got are these 3 little, what are they called, like less than signs or brackets or chevrons. Wow, I learned something new. Okay.
I didn't know that.
No. So what we've got right now is we can put a command in on this little chevron line. And now I'm going to think of gas station. And when we hit enter, it will execute the line right there. So 2 plus 2 is 4. We can also use decimals, and which comes in handy if you want to add money. So 1.4. You can do subtraction, just like you could on a regular calculator. You can do multiplication. In Python, the symbol for multiplication is an asterisk, or a star. People will call them both. Division in Python is a slash. You can also do division with 1 divided by 2, and what would you expect? Let's hit enter. And Python does a funny thing in Python version. Python has 2 different version numbers, 2.7 and 3 point something. And in 2.7, Python does integer division. So it takes an integer whole number, divides it by another integer whole number, and instead of giving you a decimal answer, it is throwing the remainder away. So another example If you actually wanted to get the decimal, you would need to change one of the numbers to a decimal, and then it would give you what you would expect, 0.5. Or, are we doing the double slash?
No.
No, okay. A double slash actually tells Python that you wanted to do decimal division, not just integer division. Okay, just like in math, and sorry for those of you that math brings back bad memories. Yes?
If you want to do this on your PC, you said go to Codecademy.
Probably Replit is better.
There you go. There's the URL.
And we'll leave that up there, hopefully, for a little bit.
How do you do Replit?
So if you type in RE
In a web browser?
Oh.
Yeah.
There it is, Replit.
Yeah, sorry the URL.
Okay. Okay, so you can use variables just like you would in math class. So you could do you freaked me out. Okay, Python white space on a line does not matter. So before we had 2 space plus 2. Now we have 2 plus 2 without spaces. Python ignores spaces on a line. Later we'll see that when you have multiple lines, it actually is, the spacing is important. But on an individual line, it's not. Just like on a calculator in math class, you can use parens so that you can help designate which mathematical function you'd like to do first. And then back to variables. So if we did x equals 4, what Python does is it takes the value 4 and it assigns it into the x variable. So then we can do multiplication with a variable. So we can do x times 3, and we would expect the answer 12, which fortunately is what we've got. You could do variable names that actually represent a real concept. So like cups of flour equals 5, then you could use cups of flour and say we wanted to have a recipe, or, okay. You could multiply it by 1/2, and we should expect that we would have 2.5 cups of flour. And then again, just another example of the math. One thing that many computer languages have are called functions. And functions make a programmer's life easier in that it will do things for you. So in this case, we know we have a function because we have a word type and then parens. And inside the parens, we have the number 1. And that's the input to the function. So it's going to take that number 1, and the function is going to tell us what type it is. And in this case, it's an integer type. We could do type of 1.0, and in fact, that won't be an integer type because it's got a decimal, it'll be a float. So far, so good? Okay. Now in Python, you can also use strings, which are words or characters put together, and you use the quotes to tell Python that it is in fact a string. And if we did type of hello, it should tell us that we have a string. And where type becomes useful is maybe we don't know what type it is. We use the function to help us learn what type it is. Just like with numbers, you can assign a string to a variable. You can also do addition of strings. So if we wanted to add my first name to my last name, Python will return it as one string with my full complete name. Now, doesn't look so pretty because what it does is Python's pretty literal. It just mushes it straight together. If we wanted a space, there's a couple ways we could do it. One of it would be to add a space as its own little string. Or another way is like what Trey put up. You could just add a space within one of the strings, either one, it doesn't matter. So, now if we're not sure whether it's a string, we could always use the type function, and Trey, you don't have to do it. But you can also do math on strings as well, and which seems a little crazy, but you could do Carol times 3.
Why?
Why? Why? That's a really good thing. It repeats it. So say you wanted to send happy birthday any number of times to your friend. You could do happy birthday times 1,000. And you're going to have a whole page full of happy birthday. And you would use it for certain circumstances where, for whatever reason, you wanted to replicate something. Now, Python, we said we could do addition with strings, and that's sort of true, although what would happen if we hit enter now? Well, we might expect that we would get hello 1, but in fact, what we get is an error, a traceback, nothing to be scared of. Tracebacks happen all the time, and what it's really is Python's way of telling you how to fix it. So the bottom line says type error, can't concatenate, which is a fancy word for smush together, a string and an integer object. So because the 1 is of type integer, we can't just concatenate the 2 together because the 1's not a string. But no worries, our happy function friends are to our rescue. Well, okay, we could put it first in a string with the quotations and get hello 1. The other way to do it is you can use our function friends and use the string function, put the number 1 in, and what that does is it takes a number and it will return a string. And in fact, if we hit enter, it does, you can see in the quotes that hello 1 is now a string. Now sometimes it's useful to know the length of a string, and we use the len function that will tell us how many characters are in the string. And we can set, again, Carol to the variable name, and we can use the len function actually on a variable that stands for that string Carol, and it returns the same 5 characters in the string. Now we're getting really fancy, and we're going to take a string that is the start of a sentence. We're going to add or concatenate another string to it, which is the first part of the function. We're actually using 2 functions here. The second part is the length function of our name string. And what it's doing is first it's saying, okay, what's the length of name? 5. And then it's going to convert that number 5 into a string. And then it adds the whole thing together as a string. And there's another example of concatenating a string with a variable that is represented as a string. Now, what do you think would happen if name was equal to the number 1? Could you concatenate it?
No.
No. We'd have to use our string friend so that we could, in fact, add the name to it. So tracebacks, you're going to make mistakes as you learn to program, and I certainly make a ton of them still. And it's just something that you deal with and you move on and you keep going. after you make the correction. In Python, you can also do a string with single quotes. And one of the reasons it's important is if you have, let's say, a sentence that happens to have apostrophes in it, you want the double quotes so that you can let Python know that, in fact, Python, I'm your #1 fan. Very funny. She said, okay, now Trey's confusing me. Okay, so, let's go back up to Python, I'm your #1 fan. On the very outside is double quotes. Single quote for the apostrophe. So Python knows that I wanted a string, Python, I'm your #1 fan. This one, the second one's kind of tricky because it's got single quotes on the outside and then double quotes around hello. And Python's pretty smart. So it knows that I wanted those quotes to be part of the string, not to be its own separate string. I thought you were going to make my life easy today. So again, we can do multiplication on a string. I kind of liked our happy birthday example better, but now if we wanted to get really fancy, we could add the variable h with the variable b, and then do 10,000. Oh man. Okay, but Python's pretty quick. And that, even though it's an interpreted language, it's pretty quick. Anybody actually have a birthday today? Because we could concatenate your name into it. And I'd be okay if you didn't want to volunteer that. Okay, so you can print strings. Okay, as we worked in this interactive Python environment, Python is, we're typing a statement, Python's giving us a response. But in a program where you're actually using files and getting more advanced, you're not going to have necessarily this interactive environment, so there needs to be a way to tell Python to print something out so a user could see it. And what we've got is a print function, and one of the things about the print function is there's two ways you could use it, with or without parens. Because remember before we said functions have parentheses. And where it looks a little different is when we use the print function, you notice it's not printing the quote or the apostrophe, or I probably should learn my punctuation names. Okay, print name. Okay, well we had set name to a 1 before, so it's printing out the 1, but that's probably not what we really want, so let's set name back to my name, and then we do print name, and it'll give Carol, without the quotes. Now, is it still a string? Well, I'm not sure, so let's type and put name as what we're passing into the type function, and in fact it is still a string. So the thing to remember is if you use the print function, it is going to give you what the string is minus the quotes or the single quotes on the outside.
Break for questions?
I would love to take a break for questions just to rest my voice for like 30 seconds. So I'm going to leave it to my trusty assistants to answer these questions.
Okay.
Does it matter if you have double quotations inside and singles inside, outside or the opposite? It's going to print the quotation marks in the inside sentence. So you had single outside and double, and you printed the double inside. If you do that reverse, you have double.
If you don't reverse, it'll work as well. But if you have double outside and you put double inside, it'll mess up. Let's do single and
And that's a great question because sometimes as programmers we don't know how something's going to work. So what do? We just try it. And the worst that would happen is that you would get an error if it wasn't something you could do. Print, I don't know. Yeah, so we got an error. And then Trey went back and fixed it.
I have a question about the variables that you're using, because you use name and you set it to 1 and then you set it back to Carol. So I'm used to writing programs in a file and not interacting with the way you are. So if I just walked in and you've set name to something, is there a way that I can see all the variables you've set? Because it's like a mystery.
Yeah.
Well,
And if you don't want to answer that question, I understand.
Well, it's obviously an advanced question, but normally you wouldn't do it in a program because Python has very good namespacing, which is not a concept we're going to go into today because that has to do with files. So that's your
Okay.
chief function.
Well, if you're gonna
I guess one of the things with Python is, unlike some languages like C, C++,
there you go. So yeah, you set B to birthday, and so if I forget that an hour later, I'm like, hey, what did I set B to?
That's kind of your chief function.
You did locals.
answered?
But yeah, answered my question, yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah.
Kind of along the same lines, is there a way for you to strictly type a variable in Python?
No. There are Python maybe subsets or Python variants that you might be able to do that, but not in Python.
Okay, so so far we've covered numbers and variables, using Python as a calculator, using strings. How about choices? Because a lot of times if we're writing a program, we want to be able to make some sort of choice about something. And Python has two what we call Boolean values, true and false. And as Trey's typing, the type function returns that it's a bool, so we know that true and false are Booleans. So say we did something like, is 1 equal to 7? And if we hit enter, we would expect it to be false. So Python knows if we're using two equal signs that it's doing a comparison and checking for whether the two are equal. If we did, is name equal to the string Carol, Python will tell us true because in the line on the other page we had actually set name to Carol as a string. You can also check if something's not equal, which a lot of times is a lot easier than checking if something is equal. And not equal uses an exclamation point to be the not. Now we've done this with numbers, we could do it with strings. So A is equal to capital A, and that's false because they are in fact two different characters. And Python is smart enough to know that. Now, think back to math class, less than, greater than, equal to. Python does the standard math functions like is 1 greater than 0? Yes. I almost said no. Is 2 less than or equal to 3? And that would be false because it's not. It can also work with negative numbers. And again, the spacing on a line doesn't matter. Python ignores the spacing on one line. Is 0.5 less than or equal to 1? So you can combine decimal numbers and integer numbers, or what we call floats and integers. One of the cool functions is if you're using a string, sometimes you want to check, is somebody's name or is the letter H in the word hello? and Python will return true in that case. Is X in the word hello? No, because it's not found in the string. And it doesn't just have to be one letter that you're checking. You can actually check multiple letters. So is low in hello? Anywhere in that? Yes, it is. And just like before when we were checking not equal, we can use the word not and use not in. So is A not in A, B, C, D, E? Well, that's false because it is.
Is in only used for strings?
Is in only used for strings? Well,
Yes.
what about,
You can
yeah,
use
I
for
mean,
lists.
the reason I'm hesitating
Yeah.
is because I think you can use it with a container.
Yeah, I think in the second workshop, we'll go into
Yeah.
some more.
But a good question.
What about, does it have to be sequential? So you did LO, can you do OL?
Ah, great question. What's the guess? False. Because Python is being very literal. So in the case where we've got HO and they're not sequential, Python is going to tell us false. HE, because it is the same exact string contained within the bigger string, gives us true. So,
Can you use an asterisk?
can you use an asterisk? Sure. Let's try it.
I meant like to do or. Asterisk is or, so like, you know, when you do a Google search, you can do asterisk.
Ah, well, okay. So hold that thought, because there are things like and or and stuff, and we will get to it shortly, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So let's first talk about if, or we're going to talk about type. So type, remember, oh, we're just going to review, okay. Try types very quickly. Okay, so the first one is, it's saying what's the type of true, and that's a Boolean. The second one, we've got true in quotations, so type is going to be a string, and the quotations are the tip off there. And if we do type of lowercase true, we're getting a traceback. So Python, in our examples, true as a Boolean is uppercase T. Okay, and false, same thing, uppercase F. So x equals 4, and x is x equal to 4. So remember the two distinctions between 1 equals sign, 2 equals signs. Very common programming mistake to get the wrong one, and you can spend moments trying to figure out what you did wrong. And hopefully the moments are short, because Python will help you, but not always. Okay, so if 6 is greater than 5, we might want to do something like print 6 is greater than 5. And in this case, what we now have is a multi-line Python statement, and you can tell that because now we're at periods or dots instead of the squiggle thing, which is a chevron. And then we would do print 6 is greater than 5, and we would hit enter. And in this interactive version of Python, you would actually have to enter once again to actually execute the lines of code, because otherwise Python wouldn't know that you're done actually typing the multiple lines. So what's really happening here is it's checking if Python, if 6 is greater than 5, then it will print the line. If 6 is not greater than 5, so let's do an example that we know 0 is not greater than 2, right? And we had print 0 is greater than 2, Python will know after we hit enter twice, and it does nothing. Because the only condition that it will print 0 is greater than 2 out is if in fact 0 is greater than 2. Make sense? Got it? Okay. So we can also use our strings, and remember, is banana in Bananarama? This is the example that I did not make this example because I feel like it dates me. Actually, Jessica McKellar made it, and she's a whole lot younger than I am. So if banana is in Bananarama, and for those of you that are under 25-ish, maybe you've never heard of Bananarama, but it was a cheesy band from the 80s. And my apologies to those of you that are Bananarama fans. And I do not miss the 80s. Okay, so all seriousness, you might actually want to do something useful with making choices and comparisons and things. So let's take an example where we've got the ages of siblings. So sister is equal to 15, brother is equal to 12. So if sister is greater than brother, we'll print sister is older. And now we're introducing a new word called else, because we might want to do something else if sister's not greater than brother. And in that case, we'll print brother is older than sister, or brother is older. So we ran it, and in fact, since 15 is greater than 12, our if sister is greater than brother, we print out sister is older, and then Python knows never to execute the else because the first condition got satisfied. If we...
Oh wait, here's fast. Like I think a little bit of break between that so we can catch up because it's best when we're typing it and then it stays.
Yes. Yes.
So I don't know.
Well, okay, this is a good place to do. Well, we can do.
Can you read the bottom of the screen here? Yeah?
Can you see if it goes down to here?
I'll keep until it goes down.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the cool things with Python 2 is if you use the up arrow, it will allow you to scroll through prior commands. Okay, so we got if sister's greater than brother, sister's older. Well, what would happen if we set brother to 15? Make them the same age as his sister. And then ran if sister is greater than brother, print sister is older, else print brother is older. Anybody want to shout out what logic flaw might be here?
Nothing.
Well,
It'll print brother is older.
There's the third condition.
Oh, that's right.
okay, so I heard some people say nothing will print, some people said brother is older will print. Let's hit enter twice, and behind door number 1, brother is older. So what's happening here?
Because sister's not set, it's automatically going else.
Okay, so sister is not equal to brother, is not greater than brother, because in this case they're equal. So we're going to go straight to the else statement. And we're going to do this else command and print out brother is older. But that's a pretty big logic flaw, right? So thankfully Python gives us something called elif, which is short for else if. And we could fix this program by using else if. So we would start it the same way. If sister is greater than brother, print sister is older. Elif sister equals brother, print twinsies. And else print brother is older. So let's deconstruct what's going on here. What it's doing is it's doing the first comparison like we did before. It's checking is the age of sister older than brother, greater than brother. If that's the case, it will print sister is older. If it's not the case, it's going to do an elif or else if, and it will check is sister equal to brother. If it is, it'll print twinsies. If for some reason it's not, it will then go to the else statement and it'll print brother is older. So let's try an example now. Just to refresh, right now sister is equal to 15 and brother is equal to 15, correct? So if we run this now by hitting enter, it's actually working and telling us that they're now twinsies. And maybe they were born in the 80s and like Bananarama, I don't know. But, and then we could, is it too much typing for you if we did brother is 16 and sister is 12, just to change it up? And then just do the same. Trey's very nice because I'm kind of going way off the script.
You guys can copy paste this over, so I'm just typing.
What?
So he's fast too.
He is fast.
How do you skip
5
the
minutes left.
cursor? How do you skip the cursor back and forth quickly, like from one end to the other? Like, you know, sometimes it's like you can do like control arrows and things. And
Oh,
some
you mean I go like
programs,
this?
That's the up arrow.
but when you're in a line, and let's say you made a typo, and you want to go quickly back a few words.
It's like control arrow or something like you can.
Hold that question.
I didn't even know that.
We'll get back to it.
We'll teach you something.
That's where editors come in, and when we talk about files later in the day,
Oh.
that'll be very relevant. Because all those fancy, you know, how you move key-wise and stuff, really is a function more of the editor.
So with this, you're kind of teaching like there's this difference between like a syntax error, which is like, oh, something doesn't match like string with integer, you made a mistake typing. But when right now you're talking about logic, where
Right.
the program still runs and the program doesn't know that it's not doing what you wanted. Your logic,
Right.
the order in which you're putting your statements was
Yes.
wrong.
So let me kind of pull it back together. So when we got those trace backs with the multi-lines, ugly, we don't like them, but they happen and we fix them. Those are typically syntax errors or something that we've done that Python says, hey, this isn't cool, I don't know how to do this, so I'm going to give you an error. Now, logic errors, we're not really doing anything wrong as far as Python is concerned. So Python's not going to complain, but your customer might if you deploy it out to the masses and all of a sudden you've multiplied everybody's bank balance by 1,000 and you meant to only multiply it by 10. The bank, who's your client, might be mad, but all the people there might be really happy because their bank account just grew substantially. So one of the things that is more of an advanced topic, but in Python we'll talk about test-driven development, where you will write some tests to catch those logic errors before you actually write the actual program. So there is a way to do it. We're not going to get into it in any depth, but just know that it's out there, and there's a way to hopefully not give away all the bank's money unexpectedly and probably get fired for, no, I don't know. But it's a good distinction between what Python understands and what Python does not.
And we do hold local workshops about that.
Yeah. Okay, so we're coming up to about 10 minutes before lunch. Very quickly, you can also do comparisons with and. So in this case, it's going to say, is 1 greater than 0 and 1 less than 2 if both conditions are true, then it will return a true. If one of the conditions is false, such as in the second case, X is not in ABC, it will return a false. If they're both false, it'll still return a false. So an AND only returns true if both conditions are true. And in this example, Trey's showing that you can use multiple ANDs in the same line. So first, we're going to check, is A in ABC true, and B in ABC true, and C in ABC true. And because they are all true, it will evaluate to true. If any one of them were false, then the previous example would be false. AND's counterpart is OR. So if A is in hello or E is in hello, we would expect that to be true, because if one or the other evaluates to true, the whole thing will be true. The only time you will get a false when you're using OR is if both were false. And I think the first time this got done, they were in Montreal, and the temperature was about 32 degrees. And that was probably the high for the day. So we've set the number integer 32 to temperature variable. We're going to check if temperature is greater than 60 and temperature is less than 75, print, it's nice and cozy. Otherwise, we're going to print too extreme for me. And since we're San Diegans, we kind of like the first one. So what does the audience think will print when Trey hits enter? Too extreme. You guys win the prize. Okay, so we've done why you might want to use Python. We've talked about numbers and using Python as a calculator and doing all the things that calculators can do. We've talked about variables. We've talked about strings. We've talked a little bit about functions, like our type function and our print function. We've talked about making choices. So equal to, less than, greater than, in, not in. We've talked about using if, else, elif to kind of make some logical choices and actions based on those choices. There are some practice problems, and they're not scary at all, at this link, which, I don't know, can everybody see that? It's http://bit.ly/pi-practice. It will take you to Code Academy, which is a website that will give you like the problem on the left-hand side and some skeleton code on the right-hand side. And skeleton code is just like some lines of code and you've got to fill in the rest, just like Halloween skeleton. And then it will check and kind of prompt you and help you through it. And these examples really just reinforce the things that we've done so far. I would love to encourage you, if you want to learn more about Python, either come back to the workshops later today or start messing around with Python on your own and look at the meetup.com for PyLadies San Diego or San Diego Python user group. There's a lot of great content, both on those meetup sites as well as the San Diego Python user group website. And we will be making a PyLadies San Diego website. So for those of you that are new to Python and want to work on a real project, that would be a good one to start out with. We have meetings, like was said earlier, every Saturday afternoon down at the community room by Ann Sear, and Pangea Bakery. And any other questions? What else am I forgetting, guys? Silence? What?
Like, I didn't follow the room.
Oh, the room. So Pangea is a bakery, and Ann Sear Incubator owns the 2 buildings, and Fab Lab San Diego's upstairs. Recently, we fixed up one of the downstairs rooms so that we could use it for meetup groups and user groups. So thank you. My ability to speak the English language as well as know what chevrons are and other punctuation is clearly limited, but I'm much better with code. And those are lovely colors. So welcome to Introduction to Psychedelic Python. I hope you guys learned something. Feel free to throw more questions at us, stop us, come to the booth downstairs, whatever. And thank you for being here.
Thanks.
And go grab lunch.
What's going to be the difference between the intermediate and advanced assessment? The biggest differences that you would say?
You know, each of them, this is a good question. If you were thinking, oh, I want to go to something else and not 2 or 3, they're pretty self-contained. So the second one is going to cover looping and lists. And 3 is going to cover some functions and modules and a little bit more real world.
That's like using files and stuff, like writing scripts.
Sort of, almost there, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
But definitely, if you come to a user group, look at the stuff online. We've got some great tutorials online too. So.
I think that's really neat to give. I think that's what I'm missing is like I can go and take all the online classes I want, but actually trying to make something that's real.
Yeah.
I think that's super helpful to be able to do that. So that's a great idea. I've never thought of that.
Open source has been around for a long time, and just getting that hands-on confidence really helps. Like just using the tools and knowing which editor works for you and that there's multiple ways to do something is really helpful. And one of the great things, my plug for Python, the Python community has a code of conduct. So people are supposed to basically, you know, Girl Scout golden rule, whatever, but be nice to each other. So by and large, the Python community is a very welcoming community. I know our San Diego Python community, we do tons of stuff together. We work with a JavaScript group. It's a nice group of people, and we like to keep it that way. So definitely don't feel intimidated to come. Even if you see a whole page of guys' names on the meetup, come, because I'll be there, or Risei, or if not, these wonderful gentlemen who have spent not just today with us, but probably the last month and a half putting together all these workshops. So, you know, it's pretty cool. So go, have lunch, enjoy yourself. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.